Every farm has its own soundtrack. Roosters crowing, breaking the silence of the morning, the gravel path that crunches beneath your boots, and horses nickering in the morning light. My name is Erica, and for more than 20 years, this has been the soundtrack and the rhythm of my life. But somewhere along the way, a small, fluffy little bird changed everything for me. What became is a simple love of chickens bloomed into a deep fascination for the whimsical world of silkies. Their charm, their quirks, and the unexpected lessons they bring to anyone that's willing to slow down and notice. I am not a veterinarian. I'm just a poultry keeper, one who has learned through the muddy boots and early mornings the wisdom of breeders that have been kind enough to share their knowledge with me, what they know. This podcast is my way of passing that kindness forward to you. Whether you're brand new to chickens or you are in chickens for many years and want to dive deep into some things for your flock, I hope today's podcast gives you something useful that you can use for your flock, or maybe just brings you a smile or a chuckle. If you enjoy your time here with the Cheeky Chicken Podcast, I would appreciate if you would hit subscribe and come join my community on Facebook at the Cheeky Chicken Ranch. So let's move on to today's topic. 'Tis the season, chick season that is. We're nearing the end of February, and I have noticed going into the farm stores where I procure my feed for my birds that they are starting to fill with chicks. And the excitement of chick season brings so many exciting things and certainly a lot of questions. There's a lot of people that are new in chickens, or maybe you're just stopping in to add a couple more to your existing flock. But this podcast is aimed specifically to the people who are interested in getting into chickens for the first time, to give you some advice and some tips on what to do before that day you decide to bring home a box of 6 or 16 chickens, as it will. You should be well aware, though, of something that's called chicken math. Because if you intend to buy only 6 chickens, chances are you're going to come home with 9 or 16, or maybe you start with 6, but the number becomes 60 before you know it. There's something funny about chickens. They're so endearing and so sweet. And the next thing you know, you start with 6 and then you have 60, or in my case, I started with 10 and I have well over 100 now. So as you start thinking and preparing about how you're going to bring these chicks home, it's important that you really do some soul searching to understand how many chickens you want to have on your property. First of all, I would say make sure that your local zoning and ordinances allow for chickens. Some cities and townships have specific regulations on the number of chickens that you can have, how they're housed, if they're males or females. Many cities that are allowing chickens in backyards now say that you're allowed to have, let's say, for example, 6 hens, but no roosters. So it's very important to be aware of your local zoning ordinances about chickens before you dive in head first. Next, you need to really think about how you're going to house the chickens with proper coop and predator-proof that coop. So you'll find in the farm stores or on Amazon or other e-commerce platforms these cute little adorable coops that house 4 to 6 chickens with a little built-in fence. They are very cute and they are pretty affordable. But what I will tell you is they're probably not the best solution for keeping your birds safe. And your number one priority before that very first day that you bring the birds home is to ensure that you're offering them a safe environment. So building a coop that can sustain the weather elements. If you live in a state such as I do, Michigan, we get a lot of snow, we get a lot of rain, and it's important that that coop have shelter from the elements or be able to withstand the elements, and that it is relatively difficult for animals to break into that coop. And of course, chickens need a run. And by a run, I mean a fenced-in area that they can go out and forage and get some exercise. Some people prefer to have a fenced-in run. Some people allow their chickens to free range. It's really up to you and how much property you have. But just remember that chickens are a delicious snack for so many animals. Coyotes, raccoons, fox, possum, weasels, rats, the list goes on and on. So as you're building your coop and you figure out how large of a coop you need, it's important to really consider predator proofing that coop, whether that is installing hardware cloth instead of chicken wire. Hardware cloth you can find at the big box stores. It's a very small mesh, and it's certainly a thicker gauge than chicken wire, and it's very difficult for raccoons to tear through and get into your run or get into your coop. So I recommend that you consider fencing your run or your coop with hardware cloth. Backing up to the coop and the coop size, determining what kind of chickens you're going to have plays an important factor in the size of your coop. Now, I have two different sizes of birds. Birds are classified in either large fowl. Large fowl are your breeds like Rhode Island Red, Isa Brown, Leghorns, Aracanas, Marans, Easter Eggers. Those are all large fowl, and they are larger birds. The bantam breeds, such as Cochins or Silkies or Seabrights, are much smaller birds. Now, if you're planning on housing large fowl, it's recommended that you have at least 5 square feet of coop space per bird, and that they have ample room for turnout. For bantam breeds, if as long as you have ample turnout, they can say up to 2 feet of coop space per bird. But honestly, I think that's a little bit on the small side. So, honestly, I think 5 square feet is a good rule of thumb to use of indoor coop space, in assuming that the birds get to go out, whether it's free range or turnout in a run. I think the best practice for large fowl, some people even say 10 square feet of coop space per bird. So when you start looking at the little pre-made coops that are so adorable, they certainly don't have 40 square feet of coop space within there to house 40 birds. But what I recommend is there's certainly a lot of resources online that you can calculate exactly how many square feet of coop space that you need. And coops look different for everyone. I have what's called a coop de condo. My coop is built into my horse barn for my large fowl, and they have a very large, tall, several multi-level coop that they roost in at night. Whereas the silkies, my bantam birds, they are set up in pens that are about 5 by 9. I have about 6 birds in each area. They're contained within my horse stalls. My barn is predator proof in itself as long as I don't keep the barn doors open at night. I learned my lesson the hard way a few years back on that. But really try and understand how many chickens you intend to have, what your goals are, and determine the size of coop that you need. Roosts in your coop are another important feature. Most large fowl all roost at night. Roosting bars can be anywhere between 18 inches to 36 inches off the ground. I will say that in my coop de condo, I have roosting bars that are actually 10 feet off the ground and a ladder system that allows the chickens to get all the way to the top. And when I go up there at night, the chickens will all be up on the very top roost. I would not say that's best practice, but that's what works for me for my large fowl birds. Bantam birds that are smaller may be more inclined to ground dwell or roost very low to the ground. So my silkies all have roosts in their pens that are only about 4 to 6 inches off the ground, and they're perfectly happy. Roosting space is important for the birds. It's important that you keep it above the level of the nesting boxes, so that they are roosting above the nesting boxes and not wanting to roost or bed down inside their nesting boxes. And then, as far as the material that you like to use for your roosting bars, I prefer to use 1x2 wood planks. They roost on those. That works for me. In the wintertime, it's important that when they sit on the roosting bars, they can sit on their feet, keep their feet warm. I do not recommend materials such as PVC or metal, but certainly anything that is wood allows your chickens to have a better grip. There's a lot of things you can get out there. And again, this podcast, the purpose of it is just to share some tips, get some conversation going. Again, I am not an expert. I am just someone who's been at it for a lot of years. Also, when you're considering your coop, you need to consider the placement of your coop. Is it in a dry, high location? Make sure that it's in an area where you don't have a lot of runoff and water, that it has some shade from the direct sunlight. One of the reasons, obviously, besides flooding, that you want to make sure that it's in a dry area is that, some diseases such as coccidia like to live in the ground, and the coccidia protozoa live in the ground. And if you are not able to keep that environment dry, your birds are more apt to get coccidiosis. So, keeping the ground dry out in the run, turning it over with lime and things like that is always very helpful. I know I'm giving you a lot of information here, but again, this is my first episode and just some talking points, because thinking about chick season leads to me down the path of a lot of questions and things about coops. Your chickens should also have nesting boxes. You want to make sure, though, if you're bringing home new baby chicks, once you move those chicks into the coop, you may want to keep the nesting boxes closed off until they're about ready to lay. Otherwise, you will end up with birds that are sleeping and loafing in the nesting boxes and doing their business in the nesting boxes instead of laying eggs in the nesting boxes. So it's always advisable that you keep those nesting boxes closed off until they're about laying age. Excuse me. And then, of course, in your run, it's important to have some shade. I have a very large outdoor run. It's, I believe, 30 by 50. So it's 150 square feet, my outdoor run. I use the 10 by 10 dog panel fencing. And the 10 by 10 dog fencing, you can buy a shade that hooks to all four sides of it. So I have a couple of those sunshades that I have hooked to various areas of the pen to allow for shade in the outdoor area. Also, I have trees on one side, so that provides some shade. And again, in a large area like that, you have to consider the safety of the birds. I don't have fox and things like that coming into the run, but certainly overhead predators are a problem, and whether that's hawks or owls. So I try and make sure that the birds come in at night as well, and that I make every effort to keep them safe. So I hope this gives you some tips about thinking about, at least, what to plan for your coop, because it's always amazing. You have these adorable little chicks, you're raising them in the house, and the next thing you know, they're 8 weeks old, and oh my gosh, it's time for them to go outside. So, planning ahead with your coop and having that ready to go before you bring those chicks home is always a great idea. If you have any questions on coops or coop setup, feel free to drop me a note. Again, happy to help or provide some resources to you to answer some questions. I would like to thank Knight's DNA Testing for sponsoring this episode. Knight's DNA Testing brings you precise and reliable bird DNA testing services available worldwide for breeders, hobbyists, and farms. Knight's PCR-based lab testing provides results for poultry, ratites, and parrots, and are trusted worldwide by breeders. Knight's seamless online process delivers you results that you can trust, from determining the sex of your birds to testing for genetic traits or disease. Knight's is your solution. So please check out Knight's poultry DNA testing at knightsdnatesting.com. I appreciate that you joined in today. We do have an upcoming episode planned for the spring with guest speaker Eric Owinga. He is the owner of Silky Pedics, and he'll be speaking about chickens and mental health. He'll be telling his personal story of perseverance and survival, and it is extremely inspiring to learn about Eric and how he uses his silky chickens to positively impact the community through positive mental health and healing. That's a story you don't want to miss. It's really quite incredible, and I'm super, super excited to talk to him. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you'll check me out and some of our future episodes of the Cheeky Chicken Podcast.